Yes, the biggest artists do need to talk to journalists. I know this is a big hot button issue. I feel every few weeks we have this conversation about music journalism being dead. Of course, it happened again, this time through the artist Russ. But I just feel it has to be said, no matter how many times we say it. Real music journalists need to exist and they need to be respected, not just for the artists, but for fans. I'm going to break it down. This latest iteration of the conversation took place on Twitter, where the artist Russ was saying that he didn't feel that artists needed to talk to music journalists. And he said in his case, sometimes he actually works with journalists directly and pays them, paying them for their time and their presence, because he felt like most of these journalists don't have a big platform, and he's kind of creating like a mutually beneficial opportunity for them. I think one of the big issues with hip hop journalism, and this can be expanded to any kind of journalism, is journalism now just means interviewing celebrities. Like, that's it. You interview celebrities and you are a journalist. And this is why podcasters, rappers, former athletes, like they are all journalists now. However, anytime there's someone who pushes back and is like, wait a minute, you don't fact check, you don't push back on your interview subject, the quick response is, well, I'm not a journalist. So they like saying I'm a journalist because it gives them that credibility and prestige, except doing the hard part about being a journalist. Being a friend of a celebrity is just called being a friend of a celebrity. And do I think there is some value of the sort of celebrity interviewing the celebrity? Of course. Hip hop media has just turned into, I mean, honestly, like just a bunch of men who got like some Amazon mics. And yes, I also got my mic on Amazon, but they got their Amazon mics and there's just like 5 guys in a room yelling. And it's like men yelling at men about men for an audience of men. And if there is a woman in the room, like, okay, you got to be the eye candy and maybe jump in if we need to know about an artist like Sex Life. But by and large, we don't even care about women. Like, your opinion can go away. It's like if a woman's in the room, the guys are like talking over her and she has to play some sort of like a mediator. And it just feels so repetitive and boring. Like, that's my thing. Even if I don't agree with you, bring something new to the table. And if you're able to do that, then I think that's great. But so much of what I've seen that now constitutes itself as like so-called hip hop journalism, it's either just like famous men interviewing their friends and like softballing them the whole time, or on the other hand, it's like these super problematic channels where it's all about having somebody go on and pretty much incriminate themselves. So when they talk about certain channels being like the ops, that's what it is. You have someone sitting there. Okay, let's see how much we can degrade you. Let's see what you can say that will be offensive about hopefully someone else, and then we can get that person and play the interviews back to back. Like, it's all about clickbait at any cost. There's no fact checking. There's no even sort of like internal gauge of ethics. Like, should we be platforming this person? I would be concerned about maybe like their physical safety, their legal situation, but these platforms, like, we don't care. And it doesn't seem like people care with all the clicks that we're getting. So that's the thing. Journalism does not mean interviewing celebrities only. Journalism is not just clickbait. Like, I know everything is content in our lives now, but just putting something on a channel and slapping the label hip hop does not mean this is hip hop journalism. Journalism, like real journalism, is so much more involved. You have to be a historian, a storyteller. You need to be able to do reporting and fact checking. Should there be a place for someone who's super artist friendly? They are an artist, they're friends with the artist. Like, sure, why not? But that can't be all that we're getting. And I think just hip hop as a whole is just missing any kind of critique, any kind of analysis. I mean, I've experienced this even like on this channel or on my Twitter specifically. Anytime I say something that's even a bit critical, and you know me, I'm not someone who comes from a place that's malicious. I don't insult people, just like that's not my thing, is just to be offensive. But if something is not good, the record's not good, or this move that you make strategically doesn't work, all of a sudden I'm being bombarded with like hate and threats and you're a hater. My job is not to be your artist publicist. My job is not to be the artist's friend. And I think anyone who comes into this industry wanting that, that's a fan or that's somebody on the artist's payroll. And anyone who wants to call themselves a part of the media, at least the media as it once was or should be, that's not what you should be focused on. It doesn't matter if Drake is mad at you. Who cares? Like, that's not the point, is for everyone to be your friend, everyone to like you, everyone to follow you. If that's what you want, go work at OVO. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I tell people all the time, when you come to the music business, if all you want to do is hang out with like rappers, go hang out at the club. Like, there's no need to work in this industry. The hours, the pay, the politics, like all the stuff we have to go through is not worth it if you just want to hang out with famous people. Go to the club, go to the strip club, like find ways to just be their friend. And I think, again, in the era of access journalism, a lot of people who should be professional and understand your work comes first, it becomes very easy to be in a popularity contest. Like, it's about, well, who has Jay-Z's number? Who cares? Like, to me, it's one thing to have Jay's number because you're doing like business with Jay, or you got Jay's number because, you had to interview him, but you can ask him tough questions, right? That's very different from, I just want to tell people I know Jay-Z. Like, okay, you know what I mean? And I think even for a guy like Jay, like that's the reason he might go sit down with the New York Times or even like a David Letterman. Those people are not trying to be his friend. They don't care about going to the brunch. Like, they're talking to him like a grown man, like an artist, a business person, a father, a husband. Like, that's how they interviewed him. And to me, those were the best interviews he did during that 444 run. I think a big problem with hip hop media right now is that the biggest artists, they don't feel the need to sit down with real journalists. They don't see a value in what we do. And I think that has a really detrimental trickle-down effect with other artists, especially newer artists. Let's just take the big three as an example. Kendrick Lamar, Drake, J. Cole, in whatever order you want to put them, like that's between you and the comment section. But those three artists, not one of them has done a introspective, in-depth interview in a very long time. As someone who follows their career, who has interviewed all of these guys, I can't think about the last time I heard any of them have sort of a adult, grown rapper conversation talking about where their artistry is, their headspace, what happened with this big battle. None of that has been discussed. And I think that's a problem. We have to take a step back. Before, the media had all of the power because as an artist, as a celebrity, an athlete, a politician, whatever, you had to go to the media to share your message, whether that be an interview, whether that be reporting, even sharing a press release. This had to be disseminated through the media. In the case of rap specifically, the dream was to be reviewed in the Source magazine or covered in Show and Prove. One day you would get the cover of The Source, you would get the cover of Double XL, and for the rare few, you might even get the cover of Rolling Stone. You wanted to be interviewed on MTV News or on Rap City or Yo MTV Raps. These things were really important as part of artist development and making of a superstar. Somewhere along the line, and I would say it probably happened maybe around the blog era. And yes, that is the era I came up in. So blog era, we have to admit that we had some hand in this. But to me, the blog era is when I saw a shift where the biggest artists, Jay-Z, Kanye, like people of that level, they no longer were really talking to hip hop outlets because to them, like we've done every cover. In their mind, I don't need to give The Source another cover. I don't need to give Vibe magazine more time talking to me. They were getting offers and opportunities from places like Vogue, Vanity Fair, GQ. Hip hop was becoming bigger than hip hop, and the artists wanted to go to those pastures. I can understand it. As they were getting older and as they were expanding into other areas, whether it be in business, fashion, the spirits industries, you have to speak to those audiences. Like, I'm never telling an artist to only be relegated to hip hop. Absolutely not. However, I do think by kind of abandoning where you came from, specifically in the media lens, that did create this precedent. And that next generation of artists, the Drakes, the Kendricks, like everyone who came after, they were already thinking that way. And unlike the Jays or the Tupacs or the Biggies, they didn't have to put in all of that time in hip hop to then elevate into the so-called mainstream. They were getting upstreamed very quickly. Everyone had a hand in it. Artists wanted these non-hip hop looks. They wanted Pitchfork and Fader, like that's what they wanted. They really didn't care about places that they felt in their mind, well, they're going to cover me anyway. And it'd be kind of this running joke in the industry. Once that rapper would fail miserably, he would always come back to the hip hop outlets, kind of like, come crawling back, like begging, please interview me. Because the people who are, let's say, the fair weather fans, the people who chase the trends and were clout chasing, they don't want to talk to you anymore. So all of a sudden, oh, you're not invited to Fashion Week? Yeah, we don't care about you. And then that's when you'd get the call, like, yeah, I mean, I got this person, full access, like, what do you need? It was actually pretty funny, but also really sad. So the biggest artists have been devaluing hip hop and hip hop media for a long time. Then on top of that, you add social media. So now, going back to what I said before, let's look at the power dynamic. Before, artists needed to go to the media to amplify their message. Now, I could just go on Instagram. I can go on Twitter. I could go on Twitch. I can go on YouTube. I can go anywhere and share my message. I don't need you. This way, I can curate my message. I can make sure it's edited to put me in the best light. The problem is, you can't tell your story better than someone whose job it is to tell your story. As the artist sitting there on Instagram Live, having a moment, things are going to come out that you probably didn't want to come out. We've seen that. There's a lot of apologies that have to get issued afterwards when you let an artist go free on social media. I think social media has shown how reactionary artists are, in some ways, how thin-skinned and sensitive. As an aside, I always tell people, I'm so glad in the 90s we didn't have social media. Back in the day, people were sensitive. They, were quick to temper tantrums. They're human. I get it. But we didn't have to see that as fans. So a lot of our favorite artists, we saw them through this very sort of pristine lens. Now we see artists way too much. I don't want to see you every day on Twitter. I don't want to see you every day on Instagram or on TikTok. This is why you're no longer a superstar. You're too accessible. And for an artist to be a true superstar or icon, there has to be a distance. That's the negative side of just being too accessible, your entire life being content. My faves, I don't know what they had for breakfast. I don't know when they were having a bad day. And you know what? I don't care. Give me the records. I would read a Vibe magazine, or I would read The Source or watch MTV News to get those moments. And when I would get those glimpses into who their personality was, have those kind of behind the scenes moments and interviews, I really treasured those. Now, if I can go on your Instagram any day of the week and I'm getting way too much of your life story, I just feel it devalues the artist and also devalues their art. This goes back to a conversation we have a lot on this channel. Why are there no current superstars? And this isn't just a hip hop thing. I think this is across genre. The superstars we talk about, the ones that we amplify and deify, they came up in an old era. Anyone who came up in the social media era, I just don't think that they have the sparkle, the mystique that you need to be a superstar or an icon. And I feel bad for the young artists who do want their story told, because I don't believe that no one has a story. Now hip hop media, Similar to sports media, even politics to a large extent, it really rests on access journalism. Journalism has just become a synonym for who can interview an artist. And to interview an artist, either one, you have to pay them. So some outlets like Vlad are very open that he's paying either some or all of his subjects. So, like, there, it's literally you're hiring someone to do a job. So, I say all this to say if quality control is important to you, if you want to have intelligent, educated, informed conversations about hip hop, support that kind of content, support those voices, whether it be, clicking an article, resharing it, subscribing to a YouTube channel like this one would be great. But I think that's important because we're in an era now where the market does dictate so much. So I don't think it's fair to complain that everything is terrible, quality has gone, down the drain, and we're just in an era of TikTokers and streamers and these podcasters who all just want to be buddy with rappers. Like, if you keep clicking on that, like, that's what you're going to get. My fellow colleagues, especially those of you who've been in the game for a certain amount of time, you want to be known for your work and not just like what rapper you think is your friend. I would also urge you, like, put out and support quality. Now is not the time to just bro everybody up. Like, there's so much trash out right now. Just because, you really, really want this interview, you got to be able to be honest with artists. I think you can do it both in a professional way, in a place that's constructive and kind. Like, I don't think you need to be mean or malicious, like, never. No matter what, that it's important to have that mutual respect because we are all just like doing our jobs. But I think you also need to demand better of yourself, demand better of your colleagues. We need to be adults, and we need more adults in the room right now. Like, everyone should not be vying for the lowest common denominator. What do you think? Do you think the biggest artists should show hip hop that respect? What would you like to see in the hip hop media landscape? What new outlets do you think can arise? Do we feel like this era of personalities is just here to stay? Are we just like in a dark period, like the dark ages? What do you think is going on? Let me know in the comments.